What's up, XDefiant fans? It is Preach as always. Today we're going to talk about how to dominate with an SMG in XDefiant. We're going to go over when you should use one and when you should not use one. We're going to go over some attachments that I think are vital. We're going to go over how to use the map to your advantage as an SMG player. And finally, we're going to go over what factions and abilities work best for SMG players. But before we jump into all of that, if you guys like this video, you already know what to do. Smash that thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new here, and turn those bell notifications on if you want to know every time I post a new video. So first of all, let's discuss what an SMG is good at, because that is going to set the precedent for the rest of this video. SMGs thrive in close quarters combat due to their incredibly fast fire rate and incredibly good handling, allowing you to shift and move much faster than the other primary weapon classes within the game. They also tend to have a faster aim down sight speed than other weapon classes, with the exception, of course, of pistols and shotguns. Knowing all of this information, we need to use this to determine when and when not to use an SMG. At the most basic level, you could say use the SMG on small maps and put it away on larger maps. And as a whole, I would say that you can't really go wrong there. But I want to be a little bit more specific than that. Depending on the game mode you were playing, you could find yourself fighting a lot of close quarters fights, even on the larger maps. So I want you to pay attention to where the fighting is going to be taking place. This is especially noticeable in a game mode like Escort. Let's take the map Meltdown, for example. As the round starts, you come out of a building into a large open space with catwalks and all kinds of head glitch cover. For both the offense and the defense, an SMG is not the most optimal gun to be using right then, as there are longer lines of sight and even large gaps trying to move from cover to cover that can expose you. Don't get me wrong, if you're frying and you're just better than the other team's players, you can use an SMG here, but it is not the most optimal weapon to be using. However, once the offense gets past checkpoint number 1, the rest of the game is inside a building. And while there are pieces of cover that give longer lines of sight that AR players can take advantage of, most of your fights around the package are going to be close quarters fights, and this is where an SMG can thrive. Now, looking at other game modes, if you see the map Arena pop up, like we have in the background gameplay today, this is an SMG playground for sure, as there is a ton of cover and not a ton of open space. The map Echelon is very similar in this regard, and SMG players tend to dominate on that map as well. On larger, more open maps, this can become a little bit more difficult as an SMG player, but if you adapt your style of play to the SMG in your hand, there are ways you can take advantage of every map in the game, even the larger ones, to be able to perform incredibly well using an SMG. Now, this is going to be one of the most important things that I say in this entire video. Do not take long-distance gunfights out in the open. I'm going to say it again. Do not take long-distance gunfights out in the open. Your gun is not made to stand on the platform above the mid-ring on the map Noodle and challenge players on the opposite platform way over there. Take fights closer to you and use the cover around the map to cut off the long lines of sight that an AR, an LMG, or a sniper player could have to see you from. If you need to pass across an area with a long line of sight, check the sight line before you go so that you can duck back in and choose an alternate route if there's an enemy holding it down, or you can use movement like sliding and hopping to get across as quickly as possible without taking damage. Again, I repeat, do not challenge the AR or sniper from medium to long range. Move from cover to cover until you can close the distance between yourself and these players that have longer range weapons. Once you are in the range that would be considered close quarters, your gun now has the advantage and you can challenge the gunfight with a much higher probability of winning. Now, this is advice I will give you with any gun, but try to use cover when you need to reload. Don't just reload out in the open where you can be shot. This doesn't mean you have to get inside if you are outside, but use a rock, a tree, any structure to cut off line of sight from your opponents while you reload. Speaking of reloading, let's talk about some attachments that I think are vital. For the sake of reloading, you have a few options, like the quick mags if you want to reload faster, things like that, but I personally prefer extended mags for every SMG, so that if I get in a fight with multiple enemies in a short time, I don't have to reload nearly as quickly. This is an absolute must on the Vector, as it only has 25 bullets and an incredibly fast fire rate, so even in a gunfight that you win quickly, you will expend most of your ammunition in your magazine. Also, for every SMG across the board, I recommend the quick draw grip, as this improves how quickly you are going to be able to aim and shoot, which takes your speed advantage as an SMG player and increases it, giving you an even better chance in gunfights. For barrels, I personally run the heavy barrel on all of my SMGs to get that slight damage buff, which I feel like extends the gun's range just a little bit, and especially with the MP7 actually allows me to be able to confidently challenge intermediate to mid-range gunfights, making the gun more useful on more places on the map. Stocks can vary per gun, but I do like the collapsed stock on most SMGs, as this is another attachment that helps take advantage of speed as an SMG player, this time with movement speed of your character. Muzzle booster is another great attachment that speeds up your fire rate, again helping you be faster in those close quarter situations, but it actually has another hidden and very unintended benefit that I am sure will get patched very soon. Right now, it says that it hurts your recoil statistics by 10%. But in exclusive Ace's testing, he found that it actually improves your recoil by 10%, meaning that not only will your gun shoot faster, but more accurately as well. This is definitely unintended, as the stats say the exact opposite, so don't count on that staying around for very long. Lastly, with attachments, if you are going to use a sight on your SMG, the only one I recommend is the reflex sight. With SMGs, you want as open of a sight picture as you can possibly have, especially with a lot of your fights coming at close range. This makes it easier to track your target that is bunny hopping and mid-air strafing his heart out. For me personally, I don't use a sight on the MP5 or on the MP7, as I really like their iron sights. But on all of the other SMGs, I prefer the reflex over the iron sights, especially the P90, because the iron sights really bug me on that gun. Just keep in mind, a sight takes up one of your attachment slots, so if you don't absolutely need it, don't use it. Let's wrap this up today by talking about the two factions and sets of abilities that I think can be taken advantage of the most by SMG players. This doesn't mean you can't do great things with the other three factions in the game currently, but these two provide the most complementary gameplay in my opinion. The primary faction that I like to use when running an SMG is the Echelon faction, and more specifically the Digital Ghillie Suit. Remember earlier when I was talking about not getting caught out in the open, but to try to close distance between yourself and enemy players to take advantage of your gun? One of the best ways to stay out of sight and get up close and personal for your gunfights is to literally be invisible on the map. Keep in mind that while you are shooting and moving, you can be seen, even if it's just a faint outline, but this will really help you get closer to your enemies before you have to take the fight. The other faction that can take advantage of SMG play is the Cleaners, and more specifically, the Firebomb ability. The Cleaners get that extra fire damage with their bullets, which may help you win a few gunfights that you wouldn't have otherwise won, but the Firebomb ability is when this really comes out to shine. Because you're already trying to be up close and personal, you're going to find yourself in a lot more situations where the enemy is within close enough proximity to you for the Firebomb ability to kill them. This may really save your bacon when you find yourself in the midst of more enemies than you can handle with your gun alone. I hope you guys really liked today's video and that it has helped you give some ideas for how to better use the SMGs within XDefiant. If it has, you already know what to do. Smash that thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new here, and turn those bell notifications on if you want to know every time I post a new video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Preach out.